member here tonight, please do so now. I would like to welcome everyone to the October 9th Agenda Committee meeting. Hopefully before the night's over with, we'll move this to the commission, and we'll be calling this a workshop here before long. Has everyone registered? We still got Tom. Let's wait on Tom in a second. One thing you need to do is be careful with these mics, guys. They're new and they're sensitive. So, yeah, good.
Okay, I'm ready.
We got 21. We got Scott King out here.
Yeah. Okay. You want the emergency announcement or roll call?
Yeah. Madam Clerk, would you read the emergency management statement?
Okay, how about roll call? We have 20 members present. Commissioner King is absent.
Before we get started, let me read the emergency evacuation procedures. In the event of an emergency evacuation, an alarm will sound. Everyone should exit the building by way of the nearest stairwell in a safe and effective manner. If the nearest stairwell is blocked by smoke, use the other stairwell. Do not use the elevator. Once you've reached the main floor, follow the exit signs to exit the building and quickly proceed away from the building. Please be mindful of others evacuating and of emergency vehicles.
The chair has asked for a motion to set the agenda. So moved. Second. Mr. Carter, Mr. Akers, a second. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, vote yes to forward this agenda. I know. And vote no not to forward it.
You vote yes?
You voting yes? Oh, you voting yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, there are 20 yes votes.
Public input on the items on the agenda. Anyone's got input on the items on the agenda? Okay. Chair asks for a motion to approve the minutes from last month, September 11th. Mr. Carver and Mr. Michaels. Is there any corrections or additions or anything to the minutes? Vote yes to confirm these minutes, and vote no not to. Oh, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there are 20 yes votes.
Chair asks for a motion to move the consent calendar to the commission next week. Mr. Bowers and Mr. Carver. Is there any discussion about the consent? Vote yes to forward this to the commission, and vote no not to forward it.
How do you want to vote, Ron? He's having trouble again. Mr. Chairman, you have 20 yes votes. You're on unfinished business.
Moving on to budget increases. Resolution 1810-001, Health Department $9,500 grant from the state for tobacco prevention, and I'm asking for a motion to move this to the commission. Mr. Carver, second by
Commissioner Joplin.
Mr. Joplin. Okay. Do we have any discussion? Any questions? Vote yes to forward this to the, I'm sorry, Commissioner. Commissioner Hammond-Tree, question.
Is this going to be as effective as the move to eliminate the opioid crisis?
Back away from your mic. Just there you go, now speak.
Okay. How effective do you think this program is going to be? Do you have any data on programs elsewhere?
Is there anyone here from the Health Department? Myself, Commissioner, I have no data.
Thank you.
This is from the, this money comes from the federal, when the cigarette companies got sued, and that money's passed down from us. So as far as the effectiveness of this, I'm not for sure, but I know most of it's education.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Aker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Goodness, yes, that's definitely a hot mic. I have a question that I brought up last term, and I'm going to follow suit again this term. In the paperwork for this, it's shown as an adjustment. I believe it will be either an increase or a decrease in the budget, and I would like clarification for what that is, rather than using adjustment on the form. Can someone tell me what that is?
Mr. Vineyard, I'm trying to, maybe do that. There we go. No, not there. Hold on just a second. Over there. Mr. Vineyard.
It will end up being an increase because it will be grant money that the county receives from the state.
Okay.
So it was not included in the original budget that they submitted.
Thank you. I would, I would like to see us check the proper box and eliminate the use of adjustment because it's muddy water. It's an increase, it's a grant, that's cool. I will support it now that I know what it is. But I'm going to ask every time I see adjustment on the form because I think we ought to be transparent that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Vote yes to forward this to the commission next Thursday, and vote no not to forward it.
I vote yes, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, you have 19 yes votes and 1 no vote.
Resolution 1810-2, a $40,000 increase for background checks. I'll just give you background. This is a new law that that came through last spring, and all staff members in the school system has to have a background check by the end of the year. I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Bowers? And Mr. Robbins. Any questions, discussion about this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, I keep on forgetting to look at it. Commissioner Hammond-Tree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I have a question about what is the per cost for each teacher to pay for this. When I was a substitute teacher last spring, I had to pay for my own background check. And I sure as heck didn't make what teachers are making. Troy, do you know the answer, Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Thanks, Troy. Oh, yeah. One second here. I'm in, right there. Over there, and then.
That's good.
Thank you, sir. You're ready.
The cost is estimated to be between $32 and $33 per fingerprint background check report. New hires, and you are correct, new hires pay for that out of their pocket when they come on board the first time.
So this is for teachers already on staff or school personnel?
Yes, sir. This is for employees that have been with us longer than 5 years and have not had a background check in that time period. So if they were employed 5 years or older, they paid for that background check the first time when they came on board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. And turn this off. Commissioner French?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to correct Mr. Hammond-Tree's statement. It's not just for teachers. It's for all employees. Am I correct in saying that? Yes, it's not just for teachers. It's for maintenance workers. It's for TAs. It's for everybody. And I believe at the Budget Committee that you had mentioned that the new law says they have to have a background check every 5 years. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Logan.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Push your button.
Push your button again, my fault. I turned it off.
I corrected myself when I said all school personnel, not just teachers.
Thank you, sir. Everyone ready for the question? Vote yes to move this to the commission, and vote no not to forward it.
I vote yes, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, you have 19 yes votes and 1 no vote.
Resolution 1810-003, County Clerk. We're going to, that is a part-time job to help out at the mall. It'll be Mondays and Fridays, and the first and last day of the month. I need a motion to move that to the commission.
So moved.
Mr. Anderson and Mr. Bright. Is there any discussion?
I have a question.
Commissioner Hill.
in general, when we have to look at personnel, and don't we budget for increases or decreases in the budget?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when we say drive increased customer service, how do we define customer service?
I'm going to ask the clerk to answer that question.
Do I have to go down there?
No.
Because this is an additional person, is that correct?
This is actually one of my full-time employees who has had a change in family status.
Okay.
And has asked if she can come back part-time. In the past, Mr. Crawford had 2 part-time employees, but due to the extensive training that is required, it takes 3 months plus to train someone to sit as a counter clerk. And that, I couldn't justify that, just pulling someone off the street and put that much training time in, and then for 2 days a week. Our mall location is very busy, and on Mondays and Fridays, it would be nice to have that 4th window open so that the lines do not back up.
Okay.
So
So
when
this-
my budget was prepared, I gave my part-time money back to the county.
Oh, okay.
Her family status changed after my budget was prepared, and she said, I would really like to continue working for Blount County.
So
On a
we're going
part-time
to see
status.
a decrease someplace else, because you're going from full-time to part-time.
No, I hired someone full-time to take her spot. So
Okay.
this would be an additional person at the mall, but no benefits being paid or anything like that, and no training necessary.
Yeah, because, you know, as we look at the increases, and this is just in general, when we look at increases, I don't have a sense of whether that means that the budget is going to be larger in total, or that there are offsets that we just are not aware of. And so perhaps in the future, when we talk about the increases, if we could have some indication of how that is being offset, such that the total budget remains unchanged for the government.
That is being funded. We had a projection of $50,000 for the year for printing duplicate titles. Well, my first quarter, I've already exceeded $32,000. So that part-time position is coming out of that revenue source.
Oh, yes,
So-
I understand that, but just when we look at finances, at least it's easier for me if we only talk about increases, I don't have a sense of what the decreases are, such that we're on track either to meet the budget as we budgeted for, or we're, you know, better or worse. I just don't get that from just looking at the increase side, I guess is the question.
Mr. Vineyard,
Oh,
maybe you can explain that better than what I did.
Mr. Vineyard?
You did a great job.
Okay.
In its simplest form, if it comes to you as an increase, that means it is an increase from what was adopted in June. In this case, these increases, the former one was we're getting grant money that we didn't plan on, so that's an increase in revenue and then a corresponding increase in the appropriation. In this case, we have additional revenue at a rate higher than was budgeted, and we're now asking you to approve increased budget to improve customer service, to cut down on the delays.
You know, I may not be stating the question appropriately, but as I look at the budget, and each month as I see increases, and I'm sure if they're not offsetting decreases, you know, it wouldn't be before us. I'm sure you must manage that in your day-to-day interactions. But I'm just saying, from my perspective, if I could get some idea that the increases that we see each month are being offset, perhaps, maybe not, such that the budget in total, we're still on track. I can't get that information from just looking at increases.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hammondtree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm not going to go off like I did the last meeting regarding unplanned expenses. I plan to be civil on this. I think this should be worded differently. It's confusing, like, to allow for better customer service. We already have excellent customer service. It should be worded better so that someone reading that can understand what it means. Thank you.
Commissioner Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wanting to ask Commissioner Hill if when she's speaking facing the chairman, that she would move her microphone closer to her mouth because it's not working. Now, when she faces the audience or the mayor, Mr. Vineyard, it works just fine and dandy, but I can't hear what she's saying very well to the chairperson. But to answer her question that she asked about how you tell where the money's coming from, in this particular case, on the bottom of the PDF, it explained how, where the additional money was coming from, rather than it being additional on the taxpayers. So that's sometimes difficult to ascertain, but in this case, it was mentioned out there pretty good. So
Thank you.
Hear me now?
Yeah.
I mean Commissioner Eckert.
Eckert.
Listen, I did get a printout, but it was 389 pages, so I might have missed a few things. But I guess what I'm asking for is an executive summary such that we can all understand that we are either on track or not on track to meet the budget as was defined when, the commissioners convened.
As a whole.
As I understand it, that is what that PDF is, and it's what I was complaining about earlier because it said adjustment and didn't declare whether it was an increase or decrease. But I mean, that's kind of our summary on every budget item that comes out. We get a PDF like this on every agenda item that is on the budget that will let you see that per the item. I typically pull them up in the meeting. I mean, right now, if I look under documents, it shows all of the documents, and I go to the PDF and look at it to make sure I didn't miss it in those 300+ pages, because the packets can be quite interesting. I agree.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Hill, lots of times I don't read all that. I just go to the clerk and say, "Clerk, what's happening?" Okay, and you'll find out that they will, all our elected officers do a great job, and they will spend time with us to make sure we're prepared.
Oh, absolutely, but, I have a question. I'll ask it.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Any other discussion? If, please vote yes to move this to the commission next Thursday, and vote no not to forward it to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, you have 20 yes votes.
Next item, the grant for recycling used oil is $22,377. There's no matching, no reoccurring. I need a motion to move that to the commission. Mr. Carver? Mr. Lawhorn? Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Hammondtree.
My question is, what expense do we incur after this grant is spent? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is non-reoccurring, so that means basically we receive the oil. Let me get a better answer here. Mr. Hedrick, would you answer that question for us, please, sir?
Turn your podium on.
Yeah, gee.
Down, down, down. Right there.
Got you. Mr. Hedrick?
Yes, sir, you're correct. It's not reoccurring, but however, the used oil grant will help the community and the citizens brings the used oil in. We'll use that in the heaters in the shop to offset heating costs. And those heaters are also supplied in that grant. So it's hugely beneficial.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Hammond-Tree.
as I understand it, there is a market for used oil. You will be selling it? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hedrick?
No, sir, we won't be selling it. We'll be using it there on site to heat the facility. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hedrick. Any other discussion? Again, guys, I'll just touch base with you again. If you've got questions, you can help us out. Mr. Hedrick answers his phone. I've spoke to him twice today, and he's very gracious in making sure you have the information before you get here. Mr. Aker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Mr. Hedrick has been wonderful. In fact, he had told me previously that we were expecting to be able to do used oil reclaiming there with Blount County. And in my business, there's quite a bit of used oil that we've been having to find a suitable way to dispose of in the past. And this is a very beneficial thing for people in Blount County that change their own oil and do those kinds of things, to have a place to get rid of it and not have to pay to get rid of it or have a certified letter saying that they disposed of it properly. It's a really beneficial thing for my business, and think that it is for all the citizens of Blount County. I'm very much in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Call for the question. Vote yes to move this to the commission, and vote no not to forward it to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, you have 20 yes votes.
Grant application for recycling. It is a 50% match. It is $48,323.38. It's non-reoccurring. I need the motion to move this to the commission. Mr. Kaler, Mr. Carver, any discussion?
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Hammond-Tree.
Where's the 50% matching come from?
Mr. Vineyard, could you help us with that?
Ultimately, unless we get a new revenue source, it would come from fund balance. But this is the application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Call for the question. Vote yes to move this on to the commission, and vote no not to forward it.
Mr. Chairman, there are 20 yes votes.
Resolution 1810-004, interlocal agreement between Blount County and the City of Alcoa for the solid waste location. I need a motion to forward this to the commission. Got Mr. Commissioner Friend, Lawhorn. It's a second. Call for the question. If you, yes, sir. Sorry I missed you, Mr. Hammond-Tree.
Will this be identical to the one we have at the Highway Department?
It is, Commissioner, it is exactly going to be exactly like the one we have at the Highway Department. It's going to be, but it's going to be located down in Big Springs. Call for the question. Vote yes to move this forward to the commission. Vote no not to.
Mr. Chairman, there are 20 yes votes.
Appointments. County Commission appointee to the Beer Board, Commissioner McCauley. I need a motion to forward his name to the commission. Commissioner Akers, the motion, and Mr. Joplin's the second. Discussion. Call for the question, vote yes to move this to the commission next Thursday, vote no not to move it to. Oh, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there are 19 yes votes and 1 member abstained.
Resolution 181012 to name the bridge, the Little River location at log mile 3.664, name it Leroy Huff Bridge. I need a motion. Mr. Michaels, Mr. French. Call for the question. No. Yes, sir. Got you, Mr. Hammond.
Please relieve my ignorance on this issue. Who is James Roy Huff?
Who's the sponsor here? I forget. Yes. Would you mind, Mr. French? Commissioner? Oh, me, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Huff was a previous commissioner that served 3 terms on the commission. He was also a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. He served on various committees during his term. In the 12 years he was on the commission, I think there were about 8 committees that he served on. He also, when he left the commission, served on the agriculture extension committee for, I think, about 6 or 7, 8 years. And he just recently passed away maybe a year ago. And this bridge is on Wildwood Road, and he has a farm over there on Wildwood Road, and he was a boon to the community over there. He raised corn and sowed corn and really helped a lot of people out over there. So,
Thank you for relieving my ignorance about Mr. Huff. I support this fully. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Might I suggest that my fellow commissioner read the resolution? It gives an excellent biography of Mr. Huff.
Thank you, sir. Call for the question. Vote yes to forward this to the commission next Thursday, and vote no not to.
Mr. Chairman, there are 20 yes votes.
Resolution 1810-13, changing Rule 12 for the procedure of the Blount County Commission. I need a motion to move this forward. Mr. French, Commissioner. Need a second? Commissioner Reagan. Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a technical amendment. I'm going to read it. I move to amend the resolution as follows. Where it states the committee shall be composed of all the members of the Board of County Commissioners, strike out the committee shall be, and insert the commission workshop shall be a standing committee. So it reads the commission workshop shall be a standing committee composed of all the members of the Board of County Commissioners. Further, insert another be it resolved clause as follows. Be it further resolved that Rule 6A of the procedures of the Board of County Commissioners of Blount County, Tennessee, and any other rule thereof be revised by striking agenda committee where such term appears and inserting in its place commission workshop.
Commissioner Anderson, thank you for finding those mistakes there that we didn't find all those places where we needed to strike agenda meeting and change it to workshop. I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Aker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I understand this, this is basically redesigning this meeting to no longer be referred to as the agenda committee meeting, and it will be a commission workshop. Is the purpose of that to make it a less formal meeting so that we're not counting how many times people talk or how long that they're talking? I mean, I know that you're one of the sponsors of it, and Commissioner French is the other sponsor of it. Can you all give us more of a feel for exactly what we have in mind? If I've already covered it, I'm good, but if there's something else to it, I'd like to know what it is.
You covered it.
All right, thank you very much.
Any other questions, discussion?
Can I assume then that the working committee will be just that, where we can ask questions and not be responsible for reading 398 pages?
Well, Commissioner, you're responsible for those pages.
I understand that
Okay.
perfectly. But I guess what I'm trying to get to, can we have a meeting where we could ask questions and have some dialogue, and then we can move forward with whether or not to take it to the next stage?
Commissioner, that's exactly what I would like to happen, but if there's stuff in there that we should have known before we got here, I hope that we don't drag this meeting out discussing things that we could read in the first paragraph or so of some of those pages. And that we get to, for instance, there's not a week go by that I don't spend at least 2 days in the office with the mayor and Mr. Vineyard. They're available. They will answer all these questions. Okay, when we come here, basically, what I hope happens is that we ask questions if there's something that's, for instance, perfect example right here. Commissioner Anderson found some mistakes that we needed to, not mistakes, but found some places that we needed to fix before we move this to the commission next week, because we would have been referring to the workshop as the agenda, other places within our rules. So I appreciate him taking time to find those for myself, because I'm the one, I take full responsibility for not doing that. So thank you for doing that, and that's what this workshop's for. I hope this is going to be a workshop here next month. Is there any other questions? I'm sorry. Commissioner Crowe.
Yeah, I think we misrepresented there just a little bit. The reason we have these rules is so everybody gets their chance to speak and we do it fairly. So the Robert's Rules of Order, all of this is trying to set up so we can have a fair republic and everybody gets a chance to speak. So we can't really get rid of most of our rules, because if we do, this thing with 21 people will turn into chaotic, all right? So I think they're really just trying to relax the sound of it, is my thoughts. But we can't suspend our rules, because there's going to be some times in here when we're passionate about our issues, and if we don't have rules, it's going to get very, very ugly. So I don't think we're saying, hey, we're going to relax and not go by our rules. We're going to say, hey, we're changing the name so it'll seem like we're a little more relaxed. And again, I think this is the place when you want to debate something. This is supposed to be a working committee, and we really try to get our feelings out and get it resolved. But truth is, we all have our passions, and we got to keep rules or it will turn into a free-for-all.
Commissioner French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to agree with Commissioner Crowe. If you'll notice the change that Commissioner Anderson spoke of, it says the commission workshop shall be a standing committee. That in itself as a committee of the commission, we're still bound by our commission rules. So we're not changing anything, we're just changing the name of it so it won't be confusing.
Commissioner Anderson.
Mr. Chairman, can I get a second on my motion, or a call for a second, please? I'll second. Thank you.
Yes, sir, Mr. Anderson, you're doing great. Okay. Okay, we got okay. Okay, I got you. We got any other discussion? We've got ahead of ourselves. Okay, we're going to vote on the amendments that Commissioner Anderson has gave to us. Okay, vote yes to make those changes. So every place in the rules, it refers to this group as a workshop. It would be changed from an agenda meeting to a workshop. Vote no not to make the changes.
Mr. Chairman, there are 20 yes votes.
Commissioner Anderson, now, with us voting on that, do we need to vote again to move this on forward? Okay.
On the amendment on the resolution as amended.
Okay. As this resolution is amended, I call the question to move this forward to I'm sorry. Mr. Aker, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we're not relaxing Robert's rules. We're changing the name of this
Let me just say this. My main purpose for this was that when I vote here, that I'm not voting to make it's not a vote that's going to change anything in this county. I'm voting to set an agenda for next week. And yes, I do want this to be a little more relaxed, but if we have to, if the rules are here, I can use the rules to operate this meeting. But we've had discussion here tonight that's been a little flexible. Okay, but as long as we're civil and we're doing business that benefits this county, I'm not saying I want to change rules. I just want to make sure everyone gets their say and that we're a little more comfortable in what we're going to be next week when we have our meeting.
Thank you for that. I've heard some statements read at the beginning of some agenda committee meetings that I wholeheartedly disagree with. And that is that we're not doing anything official in this meeting, that all we're doing is passing things on to the next meeting. However, when commissioners on this committee have been opposed to items, they weren't forwarded over to the next meeting, and that was official. So we mustn't let the name of the committee affect the real world observation that it is an official action of this commission. And when we say no, it stops. And when we say yes, we voted for it to move forward. It isn't final yet, but if we don't like it, we can stop it right here. So there was a lot of things that took place in this last election that we talked about, votes that took place in the agenda committee meeting, that things were voted down, but people voted yes for, even though it was voted down. And those people did vote yes to move those items forward. And we need to be aware that our vote in any committee is public record, and it should stand by itself, not just I was only voting to move it forward to talk about it next week. It is, the purpose of this does need to be to iron it out so that we like it or we don't like it, and we stand behind how we voted. If we voted to move it on, we liked it, or we wouldn't have voted to move it on. So I just want to make sure everybody doesn't let anything cloud our mind on that, because this is the way that it is. If we like it, it's good, and if we don't like it, we vote no. Am I wrong?
Well, I'm going to disagree, because sometimes I vote yes because I need more information about something. Most time but my time.
Yes, sir.
You've spoke twice.
I didn't say anything yet.
Okay.
I was just ready.
Sometimes, say, and that's one of my reasons for this, the reason I sponsored it, because just because I vote yes in this meeting doesn't mean I'm going to support it next week. I'm trying to make sure that everyone knows this is a workshop to set the agenda for the commission meeting. And that's all we're doing here, is setting an agenda for the commission meeting. Okay, I'm calling the question. Vote yes to move this on to the commission next week, and vote no not to move it on.
Mr. Chairman, there are 20 yes votes.
Resolution 1810-14, Rule 6B, Procedure of the Board of County Commission, Blount County, Tennessee. I would need a motion to move this on to the commission. Commissioner Aker. And Commissioner French. Commissioner Aker, this is your bill. Would you, or your resolution, would you please speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are 21 of us on this board. If we're bringing something before this board, a resolution, I feel like that if we can't get another party to sign on to it, to at least to bring it to this meeting, we're probably wasting our time putting it on the agenda for this meeting, for our workshop committee, if that's what we're going to call it in the future. I can't think of a reason for us to try to bring anything before the commission, before this committee, as an individual when there's nobody else willing to sign on. And I think that it just provides us some protection of our time, if nothing else, because again, if not a single other party would sign on to co-sponsor, what's the point in all of us discussing it? What's the point of it drawing attention to whatever matter it's drawing attention to if it can't get a second? And that was the purpose of the rule change.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion? Call the question. Vote yes to move this on to the commission next week. Vote no not to move it on.
Mr. Chairman, there are 20 yes votes.
Number 8, Resolution 1810-15, Rule 6B, the procedure of the Blount County Commission of Blount County. I need a motion to move this forward. Second. Okay, Commissioner Aker, would you mind speaking to this one? Oh, wait a minute. Go ahead, Mr. Aker, Commissioner. Oh, no, it's, push your button, please, sir. There you go, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This one is very much in line with the previous one. It basically says that in order for this workshop that we're going to call it now to discuss it, at least one of the parties that sponsored it needs to be here to answer questions, very much like I'm answering questions for this one now. It's kind of silly for the rest of us to be discussing something if none of the sponsors of it are here to answer questions. Anyway, so it should sit by idle and wait till such a time as the sponsor of it is, at least one of the sponsors of it is present to answer questions.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner French.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would offer to amend this resolution where it states, any resolution including committee, let me preclude this. We have just sent a resolution forward to the full commission. I know it hasn't been voted on yet, but that particular resolution says that we would need to have 2 sponsors for a resolution to be considered. This resolution, I'd like to offer an amendment where it states, any resolution including committee or subcommittee resolutions must have a sponsor's name on the heading of the resolution. I want to strike that out because we have just stated we need 2. Any, and insert, must have both sponsors' names on the heading of the resolution.
Thank,
Or at least 2, however, yeah. Well, it should be the sponsors of the resolution, I would think. Yeah.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah.
And again, that's a clerical. You and Mr. Anderson are on it here tonight, and we appreciate you guys making sure we get everything correct. Give us time here to get this in the computer.
Okay, he made an amendment.
Yeah, and I need Mr. Crow's. Okay, sponsors. Mr. Aker seconded.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is to, go ahead, do you mind reading that?
Okay, it's been amended to where when it states, any resolution including committee or subcommittee resolutions must have a sponsor's name on the heading of the resolution. Strike out must have a sponsor's name on the heading of the resolution, and insert must have both sponsors' names on the heading of the resolution.
I think it needs to be at least 2 rather than both.
Okay,
Could be multiples. Okay, is there questions about this change? Call the question, vote yes to make the change, and no not to make the change. For the amendment, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, you have 19 yes votes and 1 member has abstained.
Okay, so with the amendment, Resolution 1810-15, Rule 6B, the procedures for the Blount County Commission of Tennessee, I call the question to move this to the commission next Thursday.
Chairman?
Yes. Oh, okay. Sorry, Mr. Anderson.
I just wanted to say something real quick because we have 2 resolutions. I think next week we need to figure out which one is going to be the resolution and just amend it to be the resolution, because otherwise we're going to pass 2 resolutions and only the second one is going to stick. Because both of these resolutions say we're going to amend 6B, and then it has the full text of the rule. So I just wanted to say that next week we need to be sure when we pass a resolution, we just pass one and have the full text of the resolution.
So do we need to fix that now?
Well, we've already passed one of the resolutions, so I think just next week we need to be sure that only one of them gets voted through and we amend it as
Well, but
we want to.
we're getting ready to send the second one to the commission. We can't, once we set the agenda, we would have to be, when we try to set the agenda next Thursday, you would have to ask to change the agenda and combine them. We can't do it. We can't pass this here and change it between now and then.
No, I'm just saying at the meeting next week,
We're gonna combine.
we need to combine them
Before we set the agenda.
perhaps.
Okay,
Right, we can just amend the first resolution as we want to match what we've just done on this one,
okay,
but we just need to pass one of them
okay. So you're saying we need to do it sometime next week?
sometime next week.
Either at the beginning or when we get to that point?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or statements? Okay, we're going to vote to move this to the commission next Thursday. Vote yes to move it on, and vote no not to.
Mr. Chairman, you have 20 yes votes.
Commissioner Aker.
That's all my fault that it was two. Laurie did it as one to start with, and I made it separate, so I'm the one that messed all that up, but we'll fix it with an amendment Thursday. Thank you.
Commissioner Michels.
Well, I may be numb over here, because I'm about froze solid with a jacket on, but my brain may not be functioning, but can we not make an amendment now, after we voted for it, to combine the two, and then it just winds up being one on the commission meeting?
I don't think we can do that right now.
Okay.
Commissioner Anderson, what would be your recommendation?
I'm going to recommend that we just deal with it next week and amend the first resolution.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Aker.
If this was a workshop instead of an agenda committee meeting, would we be able to do that?
I would be fine with it. Here we go, guys. Resolution 1810-16. Blount County Legislative Body established a real property lease agreement that extends beyond the end of the current fiscal year for Blount County, Tennessee. I need a motion to move that to the commission next Thursday. Commissioner Kaler and Commissioner French. Is there any discussion? Call the question. To move this on to the commission next week, vote yes, and not to move it, vote no.
Mr. Chairman, you have 19 yes votes and 1 member abstained.
Announcements. Does any commissioner have an announcement? Okay, I've got enough for all of us. Monday, October the 15th. Whoa, gee whiz. Go ahead.
Mrs. Hasty is already aware of this, but before I became a commissioner, it happened to me, and tonight it happened to me. There weren't any agendas available for the Budget Committee when I came in. And I think Mrs. Hasty is going to take care of that problem, but people who came in later don't have a clue what you're talking about when items were moved from the Budget Committee meeting to this committee meeting. But Mrs. Hasty, as usual, has it under control. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll work on that, okay? We'll try to fix that problem. Okay, Monday, October the 15th, 5:30. The Board of Commissioners will have a tour of the Sheriff's Training Facility and the 911 Communication Center. We need to know by Friday if you're going to attend. Laura needs to know by Friday. Tuesday, October the 16th, 6:30, Blount Memorial Hospital is hosting a reception for us in the auditorium at the hospital. Laura needs to know by Friday if you're going to attend. Veterans Affairs Committee meeting tomorrow, October the 10th at 4:30 at the Blount County Courthouse, room 315. Human Resource Committee, October the 16th, that's next Tuesday at 5 p.m. in this room. Informational Technology meeting, Thursday, October the 18th at 6 o'clock in this room. The Board of Commissioners will meet in a regular session next Thursday, October the 18th at 7 o'clock in this room. And a reminder, next Thursday in this room, we're going to take a picture of all of us. So wear your ties and all your fancy stuff. Any other items? Okay. Public input on the items not on the agenda. Somebody's got something they need to say to us. You better hurry. Motion to adjourn. So moved. Let's go home. Thank you, guys.